tools can use to measure those things a bit. And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Florida won by 6, Houston won by 3, Florida won by 2 last night in the national championship game. Third fewest points of a total margin in a Final Four.
The Final Four, both games were phenomenal right to the end. You watch the game on Monday night here in the national championship game, phenomenal all the way to the end. Sometimes just as a sports fan, as a non-gambler, that's all you can ask for, and that delivered in a big way.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
These guys are barreling everything right now that are hitting well. Pitching is usually ahead of hitting this time of year, but torpedo bats is what we're reading about, Tom, and I think it's hilarious.
Will the pitching be out in front, or are the bats actually this strong? So it's going to develop over the course of weeks. And again, if all teams have the ability to do so, be creative with it and get out there and use it.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Today is Wednesday. The Masters tees off tomorrow. Today, the par 3 contest going on in Augusta. We will preview the first major with Brady Kannon of SportsGrid coming up in just about 20 minutes from now. In addition, Sam McQuillan joins us from Legal Sports Report. We'll dive into the very latest on sports betting going on across the country. And of course, we talk some Major League Baseball here on the show, some National Football League as well, so make sure you stay with us throughout the entire program. We'll also hit on some soccer with Kyle Bonn of Sporting News as well. But let's get started with the big sports betting news of the day, and a big surprise as the next state to potentially legalize sports betting is creeping closer. And believe it or not, state number 40 could be Hawaii. The legislature yesterday approved a bill to legalize sports betting and fantasy sports in the state. The bill, which is already passed in the House, will return to the House and go back to see if there's any changing to the bill coming up. And if the House approves it, it will go to the governor, Josh Green, to sign. And if it happens, it will be the first form of sports betting in the state of Hawaii. So stay tuned. Maybe by the end of 2025, a new state gets legalized, and it could be the place where a lot of people go on vacation. So more to do in Hawaii. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, a group of lawmakers have filed a bill that would ban prop bets on college athletes. So stay tuned to this one, because we've heard a lot of discontent about people betting on collegiate athletes' props. In addition to banning props in North Carolina, it would also limit betting on a site at a collegiate sporting event 8 hours leading up to it as well. So as you can see, some pushback on college betting and on props. And North Carolina, a place where, of course, college basketball reigns supreme, could potentially see a change there. The biggest surprise in sports yesterday had to come courtesy of the Denver Nuggets. They fired their head coach, Mike Malone, and also fired their general manager as well. The Nuggets are 15 games over 500. The playoffs begin next week, and the Nuggets are coming off a championship a couple of years ago. Malone, in fact, had been with the team for 10 years, and his record was 471 and 327 as the head coach. So what gives? Here's team president Josh Kroenke saying that there were certain trends that were very worrisome to me at different points in time. This is a statement. but they would get masked by a few wins here and there. And in the world of professional sports, when winning and losing is your currency, winning can mask a lot of things. So the Denver Nuggets going into the playoffs with an interim coach, and we'll see what happens there. Mike Malone will have no problem getting a head coaching gig next year. That is for sure. Game of the night in the NBA last night had to be between the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks. And if this is a preview of the playoffs, we got a good one. It was a overtime game, 119-117. Boston ends up winning, so they covered that 1-point spread. Down by 3 with under 5 seconds to go. Jason Tatum hit a 3 to send the game to overtime, but the big score in this one was Kristaps Porzingis. 34 points, 8 of 13 from three-point range. Is this a preview of what we'll see in the playoffs? Head coach Joe Mazzulla of the Celtics said, well, not so fast.
I mean, it means nothing. If anything, it's more dangerous for us thinking, one, that we're going to get to the second round. We may not get there. You have to surrender to that it may not go the way that you want it. So there's so much that needs to happen before that. And if you don't handle what you've done against somebody else, then that could actually be more detrimental to you psychologically. And so it all depends on how we continue to get better as a team.
Yeah, well, and you hit on it. They're the defending champion, right? So until someone proves they can beat them, that they're defending their championship. And so we know that there's a lot of work for us to do. We're still, working through things. I thought Jalen gave us really good minutes. So that's a big plus. Each game he'll get better and better, and but the playoffs will be here, shortly. So there's urgency to this.
Imagine betting the Minnesota Timberwolves yesterday. Your team is up 24 points. You're feeling pretty good. And then the Bucks come all the way back to win 110-103 against Minnesota. They outscored them, folks, 40-13 in the fourth quarter. Giannis had a triple-double, 23 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists. But the talk afterwards from Doc Rivers was that monster comeback in the final period.
Score 13 points in the fourth quarter. I think it's a 39-8 run for you guys to close it. Just what you like about that zone defensively that you guys kind of mixed up the rhythm for them?
We just slowed them down. It got them moving around. I thought we put pressure on the ball, bring the ball up the floor, and then falling back in the zone. Zone's an amazing thing. If you get a couple of stops, then the third and the fourth, it starts becoming a little mental. It really does. And we planned that. We didn't know we were going to do that. But, we looked at the numbers and we felt like this is a team we can zone a little bit with some of the lineups they have on the floor. And listen, they missed some shots. But we created a lot of turnovers. We rebounded the ball. And more importantly, what it created was stops so we can get out running. Because we didn't do that all game because they were scoring every time. So, heck of a win. It really is. When you have 4 guys on the bench with 1 starter, that's what you play your last 7 minutes of the 8 minutes of the game with. It's pretty impressive from our guys.
The team that no one wants to play in the playoffs, I've been saying this for weeks, it's going to continue. The Golden State Warriors are just on a tear right now. They put up 133 last night against the Phoenix Suns as they clobber them by 40. The Suns have now lost 7 straight games. The Warriors keep cruising, and head coach Steve Kerr is getting ready for the postseason.
It's great. I loved how Draymond and Steph and Jimmy, our vets, really established the tone. Even before the game started at shoot-around, they were locked in, and it showed right from the outset.
How much of a stress reliever is a night like tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great night for us with the back-to-back to keep everybody under 25 minutes or so. I guess Steph was almost at 26, but and then to get a lot of minutes for guys off the bench. I mean, it's always important, to keep the spirits up when you're one of the guys who doesn't play a whole lot. Really happy for Trace. With Quentin out, we had him in the rotation from the beginning of the game, and he really responded and played well, made some big plays for us out there. And he's kept such a great attitude and worked so hard during this time, the last couple of months, and showed who he is.
Steph Curry having an epic finish to this season. So is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 42 points as the Lakers go down to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Luka Doncic was thrown out of this game, which certainly led LeBron James into thinking things went sideways for his team from that point forward.
So up 1 when Luka gets ejected. What did you see kind of in that interaction, and how did that impact the rest of the game?
Yes. It was a weird couple minutes after that, starting with the ejection. I don't know why the ref was taking it personal. He had already gave Luka one, and Luka knew that. And Luka was going back and forth at that time with a fan that was sitting courtside, like Luka does, and fans get to talk out of their mind, whatever the case may be. And Luka was going back and forth, and the ref took it upon himself to think it was, verse him or whatever the case may be. But then another tee on Vando after a block shot, and the game was just weird as hell after that moment.
All right, right now the Golden State Warriors, one of the teams to beat, so would be the Oklahoma City Thunder. You could also thank Nick Lodolo for giving the Cincinnati Reds a win, although the script has been flipped, so to speak. All of a sudden the Giants can't score, and the Reds are winning. They haven't scored in 2 straight games. Reds win 1-0. Victor Caratini helps the Astros get a win in 12 innings over the Seattle Mariners. Also, the Diamondbacks win. Merrill Kelly has a nice game. The Diamondbacks win 4-3. And the Chicago Cubs playing really good baseball right now in the National League. Dan Swanson has a tie-breaking single in the 8th inning as the Cubs beat the Rangers 10-6. James Wood with a big game. The Nationals are playing better. They beat the Dodgers 8-2. Sean Moore is back. And the Braves beat the Phillies 7-5. And the hottest team in baseball right now has to be the Detroit Tigers. They beat the Yankees again. Tariq Skubal with a 5-0 win. Skubal 6 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs, and 6 strikeouts. Afternoon baseball today begins at 1 o'clock Eastern. Soccer's coming up as well. Kyle Bonn will join us next.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple 15.5 point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We know what Chris Sale can bring. I was personally high on Schwallenbach. Smith Shawver, their other starter, looks okay to kind of bad. They need to I don't want to say tread water, so I think that puts it in a bad light, but that's what they ultimately need to do. They need to tread water until Strider gets back, until Acuna gets back, and maybe it's just part of the team morale mentality that we're not at full strength. We need to kick things into gear once those guys get here.
Pro baseball today, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the Tribes, I believe that California can too.
Would bring a lot of money to the Tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the Tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the Tribes.
NewsWire. Only on SportsGrid.
After every round, you guys were still up in each other's face, mouthing off before you went back to your corners, trying to get not just the last punch, but the last word. What was the move between you guys? Obviously, you're in there for your fight.
It didn't cut him. It didn't stunt him. A point wasn't taken away. There's no reason to even mention something like that. You're in a brawl. Things are happening. Accidents happen.
Only on SportsGrid.
Kyle Bonn is with us from Sporting News to dive into the latest on soccer and, of course, the Champions League going on today. Also, some finals yesterday we will break down as Kyle joins us. And Kyle, no soccer, no stranger, especially the Champions League, to some upsets here. I see that Arsenal beat Real Madrid 3-0, which probably qualifies as one of the bigger surprises we've seen in a while.
Yeah, not necessarily the result being a bigger surprise, but the way that happened in the scoreline. I mean, I don't think anybody saw Arsenal destroying Real Madrid in the manner that they did. Declan Rice scored 2 absolutely unbelievable free kicks, which was pretty cool because one of them was, bend it like Roberto Carlos did a number of years ago, that famous video of him weaving the free kick way outside the goal, and Roberto Carlos was in the house for that game, so it was a pretty cool moment. And then he pocketed the next one, top corner. Just an unbelievable day for Declan Rice. But Arsenal fully deserved that scoreline. Real Madrid were not good in this game, and I don't think anybody really saw that coming. So for the second leg here, most people think that Arsenal are through. Real Madrid will talk about, oh, it's not over till it's over. But I think from a betting perspective, what we can really focus in or key in on here is that the second leg will be one-way traffic. Real Madrid will be all out, guns blazing, trying to get back into this game. And I would take the over on Real Madrid shots. I would take the over on Arsenal goalkeeper saves. So that game is really going to probably be one-way traffic.
Big win for Inter Milan. They beat Bayern Munich 2-1, and that's a big blow for Bayern Munich's chances to win the Champions League.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the scoreline here is still close enough that anything can happen. But now Bayern Munich have to go to Italy and get a result on the road against the best defensive team in the Champions League. Inter, including the goal that Bayern Munich scored in the first leg, have only conceded 3 goals now through 11 games in the Champions League. That's unbelievable. So best defensive team in the Champions League. This is going to be a really tough one for Bayern. And they're going to have to do it without Jamal Musiala, who went down with a hamstring injury last weekend. He's done for the year. That is a massive blow to Bayern's chances. He was really their entire playmaking operation. They still put together 2.5 XG in this game, but against Inter, you really have to create quality chances in order to score, and they just couldn't do that. Inter were deserving of their win, even if it came dramatic late on. So a really big one for them. I would keep an eye on Inter to win the Champions League. I'm not sitting here saying that they will, but their odds at around plus 600, that's pretty good value. They've got a shot at it.
All right, let's try and take a look at the slate today and see if you have any leans or strong opinions here, Kyle, on a couple of matches set to go off here. We've got Barcelona taking on Borussia Dortmund. Let's break this one down. And I know Barcelona certainly, has an opportunity here as a home favorite at plus 330. Is that the lean for you here? Because certainly that would be the way that I think most lines are trending.
Yeah, so both of these games today are a huge favorite against a massive underdog. One of them, this one, Barcelona and Borussia Dortmund, I'm with the favorite. I really just think, Borussia Dortmund have been a thorn in a lot of European team sides over the course of the last couple of years in European play, regardless of how they're playing domestically in the league. This year, though, I just don't see it happening. They're 8th in the Bundesliga, which is really, really poor compared to their expectations, and it's just not clicking for them. They've had a couple of managers. They fired Nuri Sahin earlier this year, and it's just been a roller coaster for them. They're still here in the Champions League, mostly thanks to a soft draw, and I would just play. I think there's a better chance of Barcelona blowing the doors off Borussia Dortmund here than there is a chance of an upset. So I'm playing any kind of over or spread on Barcelona here that can get you some good odds. I think you can get minus 1.5 goal spread here for Barcelona to have a multi-goal win for about minus 150. Now, the other game, I will say, will go the opposite direction. I think PSG and Aston Villa, there is a good shot here for Aston Villa to spring an upset. PSG is by far the better team, and they're in better form. But at plus 500 for Aston Villa here in this first leg, you can even get double chance. So Aston Villa draw or win at around 2-1 odds. I love that because you've got Unai Emery, their manager, is extremely experienced and successful in Europe. He's won the Europa League a number of times with Sevilla. And you've got Emi Martinez in goal for Aston Villa, who's the Argentina goalkeeper, really, really big game player. And PSG's problem is that they create a ton of chances but cannot score. It got them in real trouble early in the league phase. They had to really come back up the table because they struggled to produce results, even though they overwhelmed the opponent. And when you're going up against an experienced manager like Emery and a really good goalkeeper like Emi Martinez, I think there could be some chance for an upset here. I think there's a lot of value on Aston Villa.
All right, let's cap it off with CONCACAF coming up. Inter Miami, one of the most popular teams in the world right now, of course, with Messi playing for them against LAFC. Champions League quarterfinal, second leg tonight. Expect the unexpected, I suppose, whenever Inter Miami plays, especially in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, and it's been a weird year for Lionel Messi so far this season. He's had a bunch of injuries. They've been really shady and careful about releasing information about when he'll play, when he won't play. It was a surprise to see him out of Argentina duty back in late March. So we really just don't know game to game whether Messi will play, whether he won't. Obviously, they are way better when he plays than when he doesn't. They can still get a result without him on the field. But, with him expected to play tonight, I think Inter Miami will be up for this one. What's interesting, I don't know who will win. Okay, so LAFC very good, Inter Miami very good. LAFC won the first leg, so they've got a 1-0 advantage on the aggregate. But I think there's going to be goals. Things have been wacky this season at Inter Miami, especially when Lionel Messi plays, and you've got good value on the over here. I got plus 180 on the over 2.5 goals. I think a lot of people are reacting to the fact that the first leg was really cagey, and LAFC are good defensively. But Inter Miami have been really good at home, and things just get weird in big games like this in Fort Lauderdale. Obviously, Messi's a big goal-scoring threat, and LAFC have a number of good attacking players as well. So I think this game has really good value on the over, and I think that's where I'm playing this one.
All right, 2.5 goals in that game tonight. Great to catch up with you, Kyle. We'll talk again soon. Appreciate the appearance.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
All of Kyle's leans, picks, and everything else as it pertains to soccer available at sportingnews.com. Coming up next, Gabe Morency weighs in on Mike Malone's firing, and Rory McIlroy talks about golfers dealing with the media. The sound off is next.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rhythm. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple of
15.5 point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We know what Chris Sale can bring. I was personally high on Schwallenbach. Smith Shawver, their other starter, looks okay to kind of bad. They need to I don't want to say tread waters. I think that puts into a bad light, but that's what they ultimately need to do. They need to tread water until Strider gets back, until Acuna gets back, and maybe it's just part of the team morale mentality that we're not at full strength. We need to kick things into gear once those guys get here.
Pro baseball today, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the Tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the Tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the Tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the Tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
After every round, you guys were still up in each other's face, mouthing off before you went back to your corners, trying to get not just the last punch, but the last word. What was the move between you guys? Obviously, you're in there for your fright.
It didn't cut him. It didn't stunt him. A point wasn't taken away. There's no reason to even mention something like that. You're in a brawl. Things are happening. Accidents happen.
Only on SportsGrid.
Huge surprise in the sports world yesterday with the Denver Nuggets dismissing their head coach, Mike Malone. We felt like it was out of nowhere. I guess there's more to it. Also, we'll check in at the Masters, a side story going on this week at Augusta, and our Joe Madden previews the upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. We've had both two teams, the Grizzlies and Nuggets, both entering the NBA playoffs with interim coaches, both firing their coaches in the last few weeks. What is going on in the National Basketball Association? Well, obviously a lot of things happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. Mike Malone probably get a job very quickly after taking his team and winning an NBA championship and 15 games over 500 right now. Their president of basketball operations says it's not all about wins and losses. Let's check in on Coast to Coast with Gabe and Scott, what they had to say about this shocking world in the NBA.
Well, you know what? Anybody who's been following the Denver situation, it's been pretty chaotic and pretty messy behind the scenes. Very similar to Memphis, in which you could see Jenkins just sort of lost control of the room. You've got guys fighting on the sidelines. Nobody's listening to him when he talks. You know, God knows what's going on off the court in Denver as well. Listen, I know that Jamal Murray's been frustrating people. He's not playing, but he's seen, you know, he's out at the casino all the time. Like, they're losing. He doesn't seem to care very much. Jokic is doing his thing, and it's like an insane asylum around him. You saw multiple players, like, it's been constant. These guys are chirping and chirping and chirping on the bench. And listen, Malone is sort of like I don't know, he's kind of like a Tortorella type, right? I mean, is there a more sort of over-the-top NBA coach than Malone? As crazy as it sounds, Scott, it's strange. Like, you got rid of the GM as well. I don't really have a problem with it now, in the sense that if they knew, you know what, we're going to fire this guy, like, we got to make changes in the offseason, why waste the playoffs, right? I mean, clearly, I do believe, Scott, that, and I don't know, I can't speak for Denver Nugget players, but the relationship was lost.
Very strange ending to Malone's tenure, without a doubt. There's been some strangeness going on the PGA Tour. Some players opting to speak with the media, some players opting not to. Here's Rory McIlroy on this odd situation entering the Masters.
Rory, Colin Morikawa caught some criticism at the players for saying he owes the media nothing after he left Bay Hill early. You obviously caught some heat too after doing that at Pinehurst. The conversation after situations like that sometimes is, in comparison to other professional athletes, golfers can be a little more sensitive. I'm wondering if you think that's a fair or unfair assessment.
Well, he's right. Not that I think he could have worded it a little bit better, but look, every other athlete, whether it be in the NBA, NFL, they're obligated to speak to you guys after a game. We're not. So, you know, whether that's something that the PGA Tour looks to in terms of putting that into their rules and regulations, but as long as that's not the case, and we have that option to opt out whenever we want, you know, expect guys to do that from time to time.
I think right now the deal with the PGA Tour is either they have to put it in the players' contracts that they have to speak to the media, or we as media, or me as media, we need to forget about it. Meanwhile, Joe Madden is getting ready for a very busy month and a half, 2 months here on SportsGrid with their previews of the NHL playoffs. Here's Joe with what we can expect on the ice.
With only a handful of games left in the NHL regular season, it is time to talk some Stanley Cup odds. Now, the books do have the Dallas Stars as a favorite coming out of the West at plus 550. The Florida Panthers out of the East to get that repeat at plus 650. But I do think there's a couple other teams further down the list on both sides that you can look at. Don't sleep on the Winnipeg Jets, who I do think have the best goaltending in the West with Connor Hellebuck. They're coming in at plus 1,000 and have every ability to hoist the cup this season. That power play is so elite. While Colorado is at plus 900, I worry about Mackenzie Blackwood. So give me the Winnipeg Jets coming out of the West. When we look at the Eastern Conference, the Tampa Bay Lightning have been elite on offense, but I've got to turn to the Washington Capitals. Capitals first in the Metro with 107 points. Currently on the season. I do think as long as this team doesn't tire, because we do have veteran players on it, they should be able to make a nice deep run. Give me the Washington Capitals at plus 1,000. They're going to have their work cut out for them, but what a storyline that would be if Ovi can hoist the cup as well this season.
All right, thanks very much, Joe. Looking forward to have Joe on throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, which are getting ready to get underway. We'll be right back with Sam McQuillan of Legal Sports Report.
okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and you know, launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
These guys are barreling everything right now that are hitting well. Pitching is usually ahead of hitting this time of year, but torpedo bats is what we're reading about, Tom, and I think it's hilarious.
Will the pitching be out in front, or are the bats actually this strong? So it's going to develop over the course of weeks. And again, if all teams have the ability to do so, be creative with it and get out there and use it.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
Would bring a lot of money to the tribe, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got Sam McQuillan in the house from Legal Sports Report. We're going to talk about some potential stock market buying, selling. My gosh, are we really going there? Here on the show today, very, very dangerous discussion. Also the latest on Alabama. But Sam, before we get to all that, how about this breaking news that we got yesterday that of all states, maybe Hawaii will be the 40th in the United States to legalize sports betting? You know, I would have bet heavily against that. I mean, this is a place that I thought that they didn't want sports betting because, again, so many people are there on vacation, spending money on the economy. But hey, I suppose we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. We certainly don't know what the tax numbers look like as well.
Yeah, one sure bet in this wild pace of sports betting legislation we're in now has been not really knowing who's next. We've talked about Minnesota, we've talked about Missouri, we'll talk about Alabama in a little bit. But lo and behold, one of the states that pretty much has no legal gambling at all, they don't even have a state lottery, and they have some history with gambling corruption there, which has created kind of a resistant landscape to just legalizing any gambling in general. Lo and behold, Hawaii emerges as possibly the only state this year that will legalize sports betting. A wild development yesterday, the Senate officially passed a sports betting bill, which has been the biggest hurdle so far, has been the Senate. It passed the Senate 15-10. It now goes back to the House where the bill originated, which needs to sign off on any of the Senate changes. But once the House signs off, which kind of all signs are pointing to yes, then it would go to Governor Josh Green's desk, who has been supportive of legalizing sports betting. So it's shaping up to be, we could very realistically have online sports books in Hawaii in a quick amount of time. The changes that the Senate passed yesterday were they restored a $250,000 license fee that was taken out of the original bill, as well as a 10% tax rate. So what the House needs to do is just kind of sign off on the original changes. There might be some negotiating there on small terms, but it seems like most of the big hurdles have been cleared. If it goes to Green's desk and he signs it, it would also legalize fantasy sports. So another one of those few states that hasn't even had fantasy sports. This would be a huge hurdle if they legalized both sports betting and fantasy sports at the same time. It would allow for up to 4 online sports betting apps, as well as the fantasy sports applications. There was kind of some bumps in the road between who would oversee this department. Hawaii doesn't have a ton of money to allocate resources to this kind of thing. So Originally, it was supposed to go to the Department of Consumer Protection. They said they weren't equipped to do it, so now it's going to be the Department of Law Enforcement, which oversees it. Kind of a wrinkle here is the bill would allow sports betting to take effect by July 1st of this year. So very, very aggressive timeline. You know, Missouri legalized last year. We're still waiting on them to get their framework forward. That creates a little bit of a worry among lawmakers who are kind of worried that maybe the Department of Law Enforcement won't have the resources necessary in time to get up to speed here. If I had to guess, the industry is going to try to provide them with those resources, come together, figure out how they can get this as soon as possible. If that can't happen, maybe it would be a later timeline, less aggressive by football season. We've certainly seen states move timelines around before, but very encouraging for constituents in Hawaii. Oftentimes you have late games between the University of Hawaii and whoever else is on the West Coast on, and it's a big gambling thing for sports bettors with not much else on. So the fact that they could get in on some of the tax revenue here and reap some of the benefits for the state is very significant news, especially for a state that hasn't had any forms of legalized sports betting or legalized gaming.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a great story for us and also over Legal Sports Report. All right, now let's get to the topics we were planning on discussing today. FanDuel's parent company, Flutter, one of those basic companies that seems to still be on the rise here. I know that there's been a lot of stock market stuff being talked about here. Generally on this show, Sam, we really don't dive into that because everybody has an opinion on that. We certainly don't want to give out the wrong opinions on that. But that's a company that seems to have a good start to the year, despite all of the fears of everything else going on.
Yeah, it's been a crazy environment lately. If you cover anything in the space, whether you agree something's going to turn around, whether you agree it's not. But in the gaming space, they're saying a potential recession and this growing economic uncertainty that we have, it's putting pressure on everybody. But the experts on the stock market, the focus on gaming, are seeing it as an opportunity for companies like Flutter, which own FanDuel, companies like DraftKings as well. As the broader stock market takes a hit, I think this could be a good opportunity to buy in on what they're calling these best of class companies, saying that they're built to hold up better than most, even if the economy keeps sliding. And there's some pretty interesting things about the industry, some pretty unique things about gambling that maybe make it equipped better to handle a recession than other folks. Flutter stock is actually down 5% since April 2nd when these new U.S. tariffs were announced and kind of the whole stock market has taken a slide. But Stifel sees this short-term dip actually as a good time to buy, saying that they have the strongest term outlook in the space. Sports betting is still growing. We just talked about a new state that could legalize. And even beyond sports betting, iGaming very much has the potential to be on the rise as well. It's only legal in about 17% of the country. Last time we had a potential recession, which was around the pandemic, states actually rapidly sped up their legalization of sports betting. More people were home, and betting actually went up. There's kind of a wild stat out there that historically, when the economy slides, when recessions happen, gambling actually goes up. People go to the casino more. Now people are spending on online sports betting apps more, online gaming apps more, could be more comfortable staying inside, betting on their small amounts on their phone. We've certainly seen, sort of lottery tickets like parlays on the rise as well, attract a lot of attention in the space. So the analysts are kind of saying maybe this could uniquely be good for the gaming industry. We'll have to see if more states, get in a crunch with their budgets, whether it all comes to that point, whether they would then look at legalizing iGaming more in that sense. But so far, it seems like these stocks are still very much in good graces with the investing community. When you look at all the other aspects of the stock market, it's very much the opposite. So another kind of unique way that sports betting and these huge gaming companies that we talk about spending tons of money trying to be profitable could actually be benefiting from what's going on in this larger macroeconomic environment that has a lot of the rest of the investing community very shook up.
I think that with all pieces of good news here on the show, we wouldn't be talking, Sam, with with you and with your colleagues on Legal Sports Report if there wasn't some bad news as well. I hate to see this, especially living in the South, in Florida, that Alabama just can't get going here. And now I saw a report and a column over you guys at Legal Sports Report that maybe no sports betting in Alabama for decades. Oh my gosh, what go so south here?
Yeah, nice pun there. But it's tough with these states. You're going to talk about a place like Hawaii, which maybe we thought never would get legalized. But you're always going to have, when you have 50 states, you're going to have really resistant ones. Everyone wants to do it their own way, on their own terms. And unfortunately, in Alabama, that's been the case. It's not just off the table for this year, but maybe for up to 20 years, according to two of the state's top lawmakers, who now say they see no path forward for gambling legislation in the next couple of decades. One of the largest or biggest proponents of sports betting in the state, Senate President Pro Tem Garland Gudger, he declared the effort dead for this year, and then he said he doesn't see anything changing. He said it's basically been the same thing over and over again for the past 20 years. Alabama is one of these states that doesn't really have much gambling in general, just one of 5 without a lottery. So they've been trying to push forward these patchwork proposals that would legalize lottery, legalize sports betting, but it's just run into a lot of resistance in the legislature who, their deep religious ties down south really don't want to move anything forward. So, it's tough when you talk about a state where 80% of Alabamans say they support creating a state lottery. You have overwhelming numbers saying they want to at least vote on sports betting in general. But it seems to be the same story over and over in Alabama. But we'll be monitoring to see if it ever changes.
Yeah, definitely so. 2045, not the plan that I thought we would be talking about with that state. But Sam, you're just delivering the news, as they say. Thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. You too.
All right, coming up next, it's one of the moments that you've been waiting for. Brady Kannon weighs in on his Masters selection.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
These guys are barreling everything right now that are hitting well. Pitching is usually ahead of hitting this time of year, but torpedo bats is what we're reading about, Tom, and I think it's hilarious.
Will the pitching be out in front, or are the bats actually this strong? So it's going to develop over the course of weeks. And again, if all teams have the ability to do so, be creative with it and get out there and use it.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribe, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire. It's a big week for us here at It feels like every week is a big week for us here at SportsGrid. I'm not going to lie. We're not going to have a lot of big July weeks here at SportsGrid, okay? But we're not at July yet. We haven't hit the summer. This is it, the first of the 4 big majors on the PGA Tour. It is the Masters. We've got Brady Kannon here. He's going to be with us all week long, and of course on SportsGrid all week long as we get you ready for the most popular golf tournament in the world. Brady, welcome back here to NewsWire, and I know that we're going to break this down. We'll be live on the air tomorrow while this is going on. So that's a special day, of course, for us to have this going on as well. So, and again, there's so much live betting going on. I don't want to say that you can't make picks tomorrow, but I feel like today's picks are the ones that really stick the most, Brady, because you got to plant your flag, so to speak, on some of these picks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of the fun of it, right? Trying to predict who is going to win. And then certainly part of that is, adjusting and adapting to how things are unfolding in play. I have actually hit a couple of winners over the years, betting midstream. Danny Willett back in, I think it was 2016. And then John Rahm just a couple of years ago at the halfway point. That's when I typically like to get involved in the live betting. I like to see 36 holes completed before I decide where I'm going to go from there. But hopefully we don't have to make any moves. And, all of our guys that we've bet pre-tournament are off to good starts. And good starts is very important, Craig. And that's something to take note of if you are planning on live betting. If you're not in like the top 12 after the first day, odds are you're not going to win. That's where most of the winners come from. After Thursday's round, if you're, again, not in that top 12, the odds are against you. And then going into the final round, the winner typically comes from the final pairing, and you don't want to be more than 3 or 4 shots behind. So it's not a catch-up golf tournament. You've got to get out to a hot start.
Yeah, you definitely do. So, we're going to go over a lot of Brady's picks to win the Masters. And of course, we're going to, talk a lot about some of the different prop bets and top 10, 20, 40 finishers. What I want to start off with, Brady, is the idea that I think that making the cut is like the first conversation to have, because again, you can't bet this after the cut is over. I mean, it sounds stupid to say, but it's true. So here are the odds, and I'm curious your thoughts on a few of these guys to make the cut at the Masters. And again, this will change very significantly as soon as this goes off tomorrow morning. So Cam Young, these are all minuses. Cam Young minus 146. I feel like I want to hit on Phil Mickelson here because he's playing good golf too and always seems to show up for this tournament. Joe Highsmith, Nick Taylor, Hogard. I know that you were on him. I believe it was a week or two ago you liked him. Laurie Cantor. And I forget how to pronounce the last guy's name. Christian, how do you pronounce his last name?
Bezadenhout.
Bezadenhout at 130. So this is a popularity bet here, I guess, Brady, because we showed the picture there of Phil Mickelson, who always seems to play well in this tournament, played well at Live Golf, I believe last week it was as well. Do you like any of these to make the cut?
Yeah, those are some really tough names. Cameron Young has been in awful form. I think he's missed the cut in 4 out of his last 6 tournaments, but he's done very, very well here in the past. He has finished 7th and 9th at Augusta. He's done very well at the correlated courses. If he can just find a little bit of form, I think he's probably a good bet to make it. And that would probably be a contrarian take because the way he's been going as of late has been the opposite. You would bet him to miss the cut. Mickelson, I think, is probably going to be the other way around. People are seeing what Phil has done lately. It was just a couple of years ago that he finished runner-up, for God's sakes, at 50-some years old. So this guy still, and that's the way this tournament is. The guys that play well here typically do so year in and year out into their 40s and 50s. So it's not necessarily surprising that Mickelson is able to show up now and then. Just going oppo of maybe what the general thinking is, maybe I would play Cam Young to make and Mickelson to miss. Joe Highsmith is a debutant. He won for the first time in his career on the PGA Tour this year. I would want to fade debutantes. I would bet him probably to miss the cut. Laurie Cantor, I think, is kind of a sneaky one. I'd probably play him to make it. He's not a guy that a lot of people know, flying under the radar a little bit. I'd probably play him to make it. Bezadenhout is tough. He's got a great short game, and that can allow a person to survive around this track. Don't have a real opinion on him. Nick Taylor, great ball striker, but doesn't quite hit it far enough. I'd probably lean towards Taylor missing the cut. I think I've hit most of those guys on the list, but that would just be my initial opinion on a few of them.
All right, so let's get to Brady's picks to win the green jacket here. Let's skip ahead here, and these picks that everybody is waiting for. So Rahm, Morikawa, Koepka, Matsuyama, and Fleetwood are your, I'm not going to say long shots, but these are your picks essentially. And then beyond that, again, it's dart throws, Henley, Reed, and Rose. Why these?
Yeah, I played 3 guys that were at triple digits, which typically do not win the Masters. This is a very chalky tournament. You've got to stay within 40 or 50 to 1 or shorter. That is pretty much, the top guys, the cream rises to the top. The last time a guy that was 100 to 1 won this thing was 2011, Charles Schwartzel. So I took 3 stabs, just shots in the dark on Justin Rose, Patrick Reed, and Sergio Garcia, who were all still in that 80 to 100 neighborhood. But my main plays, John Rahm at 16 to 1, Colin Morikawa, I got a ways back at 22. He's now in the neighborhood of 14. I'm okay with that. Koepka, Fleetwood, Henley, and Matsuyama. I think those guys are all absolutely contenders. Rahm, of course, won here a couple years ago and fought off Koepka, who finished runner-up for the second time in his career. Matsuyama has a win to his credit this year, has a green jacket. Russell Henley just won a couple weeks ago at Bay Hill. Tommy Fleetwood has won multiple times all over the world, but never in America. It feels like a big one is coming for him soon. He checks all the boxes and is playing tremendous golf right now. So this is a tournament where it's probably only 30 or 40 guys that can really win it, and you've just got to pick out which ones you want to land on. Those top 6 on my list I feel pretty good about.
All right, and then, of course, it all begins tomorrow. We'll have Brady on to talk about it one more time, of course, as we head into the weekend. Brady, thanks again for coming on the show. Can't wait to break it all down with you once more. Thanks for coming on.
Enjoy the Masters.
All right, we'll be right back.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
He'll never stop shooting a basketball the rest of his life. All he's going to do is become one of those old, famous ex-players that's in the Hall of Fame, that's a legend, that shows up at games, just like his dad did. His dad shows up at games. His dad was never as good as he is. And his brother is the lost soul. Like, they don't even care about his broke ass. This guy, Steph Curry, can play forever.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
These guys are barreling everything right now that are hitting well. Pitching is usually ahead of hitting this time of year, but torpedo bats is what we're reading about, Tom, and I think it's hilarious.
Will the pitching be out in front, or are the bats actually this strong? So it's going to develop over the course of weeks. And again, if all teams have the ability to do so, be creative with it and get out there and use it.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribe, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As I mentioned, it is Masters Week, so make sure you tune back in tomorrow. We'll have live updates, leaderboard, all of that fun stuff. But as we wrap up the show today, we've got some history being made in the NHL. Pittsburgh Pirates trying to entice fans to go to their games. Feel like we've heard that for a while. And a PGA Tour golfer at the Masters is told to tone down his attire. This is true. Time now for Last Licks. All right, let's begin with the weather going on across the country. If you haven't noticed, and you don't live where I live in South Florida, it's pretty cold. It is really cold for the month of April. A little bizarre. In fact, a lot of the baseball games have been moved up. Instead of being played at night, they're being played during the day, except for in Pittsburgh, where they played their game last night. Pittsburgh Pirates played, and the temperatures, I believe I saw under 40 degrees at first pitch. So the Pirates actually did a really nice thing. Pirates taken a lot of crap lately, so let's give some good news for them at the at the end of the show. Pirates announced that anybody who attended last night's game and had tickets for the game are eligible to receive 2 free tickets to a future game as long as you have downloaded the MLB app. So I suppose all you have to do is just verify that you went to the game through the app, and then they will send you 2 tickets. So look, I mean, the Pirates have been sort of I would say a punching bag, fair to say, in baseball here with a lot of the stuff that's going on. They haven't played well at the beginning of the year. They didn't sign a lot of guys. That this whole Clemente thing with the sign in the outfield. Ugh, give the Pirates some good news here, can you? I believe they're 4-8 on the season, if I'm not mistaken. So good news for Pirates fans. Free game if you went to last night's game as well. It is cold out there, as they said in that movie Groundhog Day. Meanwhile, it's cold in Canada pretty much all the time. The Vancouver Canucks players and fans know all about that. But in Dallas last night, you would think that everything has possibly happened in the NHL that can happen. But sometimes in sports, things happen that you never expected, have never happened before. It happened last night. The Vancouver Canucks became the first team, get this, in NHL history to overcome a 3-goal deficit in the final minute of an NHL game of regulation to win. Let me say that again. They were down 3 and came back by scoring 3 goals in the final minute, and they ended up beating Dallas. So it just goes to show that if you watch a game on TV or stream it or even go, you may see something that you've never seen before. 2 NHL stories in 1 week here as we wrap up last licks as well. Ovechkin was 1 and Vancouver was 2. Playoffs begin next week. Okay, so Jason Day. Are you familiar with Jason Day? He's a PGA Tour player, so of course he's one of the best in the world. You see him there. He always wears really strange stuff when he plays golf, as you can see right there. So because the Masters are starting, folks, every single year, like the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday leading up to the Masters, we get these crazy stories, strange stories, narratives. A couple of years ago, it was all about LIV Golf. Is LIV going to join the PGA Tour? Is it going to survive, etc.? Should they allow the LIV golfers to play? This year, the 2 stories we've gotten so far, the first one is about the players not speaking to the media after their rounds. And the next one is this one. It's Jason Day. The Masters has gone to Jason Day and said, hey, buddy, you can't dress a little wacky when you're playing at Augusta this year. So Jason Day's like, all right, sounds like he's sort of conceded the fact that he's got some sponsors. Now I get that, I understand that. I got to make sure we pay for that. They all have sponsors, by the way, on their shirt, their hat, the clothes, everything. But Jason Day's going to have to tone it down with his Masters outfit this season. He hasn't said exactly what he's going to wear tomorrow, so we will check it out. Yet again, another side story at Augusta coming up this week. All right, we got no more side stories to give you. That'll do it for the show. Thanks to Kyle Bonn of Sporting News, Sam McQuillan of Legal Sports Report, and, of course, Brady Kannon talking Masters golf with us. Brady will be back with us once more this week. In fact, I think are we doing tomorrow? Did we say we're going to do tomorrow, or we're going to do Friday? Okay, so we'll do tomorrow, and then we'll sort through the first half day of the Masters. We'll go through the leaderboard. By the way, Smiley Kaufman is in Augusta, and so you'll hear the show that they recorded coming up next here on NewsWire. I saw him tweet this out a short time ago. Pharrell Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock Eastern. Game time decisions at 6. In-game live game day, and then Sports Rage tonight. Big game in the NBA tonight. Luka is back in Dallas tonight for the first time as the Lakers take on the Dallas Mavericks. I think I saw them giving away Luka shirts tonight as well. Thanks again to Luke, our director, and for my producer, Frank. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday here on the show. Don't forget to download the SportsGrid app. It's available for iOS and Android. You can stream us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Happy to do it for you, and make sure it is free, because it is free if you download it through the App Store or iOS. If anybody tells you any different, it's probably not our app. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for a Thursday edition of NewsWire here on SportsGrid. That's 11 a.m. Eastern, and we'll go through the Masters, the NHL, and everything else. Have a great night, everyone. See you tomorrow.